Hey guys, Mike here from Lunch Money Comics. Today I'm in the second largest city in New England, Worcester, Massachusetts, because today is Black Friday. And between Black Friday and Small Business Saturday, there is a ton of great comic sales happening all over New England. On top of that, there's a million comic events this weekend. We have a huge Northeast Comic Con out in Eastern Mass. We have Cliff Con in Connecticut. And the Three Men in a Basement guys are doing a comic crawl this weekend. But I can't go to any of them because I have family visiting for the holiday weekend. So I chose to go to one thing, and that is That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts. An amazing comic and collectible store. They're having a huge sale on everything in there. I hope to get some comic books and some great deals on some Christmas shopping. So let's go inside, see what we can find. So That's Entertainment has two locations, and this is sort of the flagship location and definitely the larger of the two. In regards to that sale, basically it was 20% off pretty much everything in the store, and there is a lot in this store. They certainly have something for everyone, especially if you're into comic books, gaming, and vintage toys. But of course, I was here mostly for the comic books, and they do have a ton of them in this store. Rows upon rows of back issues, sorted alphabetically by character and title, which is a godsend when going through this many comic books. DC and Marvel are on the top row, and the bottom row on the floor has independent publishers and lesser-known titles. I just happened to start in the S section and started looking at DC Showcase. As you can see, these books are bagged but not boarded, so they aren't always in great condition, but you'll also see some photocopies in here. These are the more expensive books, which they keep behind the counter. You just bring up the photocopy to see the book in person, and in this way, the nicer books tend to be in better condition. Back to Showcase, this is obviously a legendary title full of both massively famous key issues as well as lesser known characters and one-shots. I like Showcase because it published Silver Age Spectre, who I love, as you see one here, but I also found Bawana Beast, who's a really quirky character I hope to get the first appearance of someday. With Spectre on the brain, I moved over a few boxes to check out his first solo series. You see again the nicer books were held up front, but I found this nice copy of number 10, which despite not having a backing board was in pretty good condition, and I thought it was a decent deal at $12 with the sale, but I already own this book, so I ultimately passed. Next, I went over to the Spider-Man titles and luckily cut right to a great book, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends #1, a book which brings me right back to my childhood. So like all characters in the store, the Spider-Man comics were organized by title and number. Again, awesome. And you see here I find some older ASMs. Now, you won't find any big key issues in these boxes, but I've always said if you're looking to fill in a run at a good price, this is definitely the place to go. And the prices, even without the sale, they're decent, and they usually range from $3 up to $15. And I think people would be surprised to see just how the condition holds up even without backing boards. There was also a ton of black suit Spider-Man from the 80s, which I know is very collectible, but it also reminded me that one of the previous times I was at this store, I did an entire video all about the history of the symbiote suit. So if you're a fan of black suit Spidey and you haven't seen that video, I humbly suggest you go check it out. Now, the biggest downside to not having backing boards is that the comics slide when people go through them. They fall down and books can get bent and damaged, and this box was driving me nuts. So of course I had to fix it to satisfy my OCD. There, that's much better. Now, there were several comics I was specifically looking for, and here I find one, Amazing Spider-Man 547. You actually see me checking for the issue before it, which is the better known book, but I bought this one, and I'll explain exactly why I wanted this cheap run filler a bit later. So another character I've been into lately is Wonder Woman, and I found her comics across several different eras, from the George Perez run of the 80s and 90s to a ton of Bronze Age comics. I was specifically looking for some of those books from the I Ching era, and here I find this one, but it was in pretty poor shape. Otherwise, there was a ton of great 1970s and 1980s issues, and I kind of feel like Wonder Woman is often overlooked. There is some fantastic art in these comics, especially on the covers, and in fact, I come across one here that I really liked, which has Cheetah on the cover. I actually added this one to my pile and then sort of inexplicably put it back, and now that I'm watching the footage, I'm mad that I did. There's actually a lot of Silver Age comics at this shop, and that's especially true of DC. There's a ton of Silver Age DC, both 12 and 10 centers. And like I said, guys, if you're trying to fill in a run, you can do it pretty cheap here. They range in price from about $20 all the way down to $5, and that's before the discount. And although you'll find some of the older, nicer books like this that are behind the counter, just in the boxes alone, there's a ton of great stuff in here, and I was tempted by a lot of these, especially the World's Finest with both Batman and Superman. Speaking of Superman, I would say the largest number of comics they have at this place are Superman books and all of its affiliated titles. You see how many older issues they keep here behind the counter. Even just the ones in these boxes, both Silver and Bronze Age, they're awesome. You'll find Superman, Superboy, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. Guys, I'm not a Superman collector, but I kind of wish I was because I would have had an absolute field day at this store. Another DC title I'm looking into is Mr. Miracle. I'm specifically looking for issue number 4, First Big Barda. Highly unlikely I'd find it in here, but maybe they had a copy up front. Either way, it's a cool title I might want to collect more of in the future, and these were priced pretty well. Yet another DC book I'm looking for is The Atom number 19, which is the second appearance and first cover appearance of Zatanna. Again, highly unlikely it would be in here, but you don't know unless you look. You could get lucky. Next up, we have some Captain America, and here I find a great issue I needed, and although it wasn't in the best shape, the price was right, and I picked it up. I also checked out their non-traditional comic books. They have boxes of cheap treasury editions and even cheap pulps across all different genres and titles, and their magazine selection is also pretty darn good. They have used and discounted trades and paperbacks, which are always worth looking at, and 99-cent comic bins as well. Now, besides the nice copies they keep behind the counter, they actually do have a glass case at the front of the store with their very best comic books, and there was a lot of great stuff in here I was interested in. Now, to take a closer look, you need to get an employee to open the case for you, but I felt really bad bothering them considering just how busy it was because of the sale. But then I spotted a comic book I've been looking for a while, Aquaman 35, the first appearance of Black Manta, and I absolutely needed to see it up close. At first glance, it was certainly lower grade, and I was a little concerned about the staples, but they let me take it out for a closer look, and although it certainly needed a press, the staples looked pretty good, and most importantly, the sale price made my decision to buy this book an absolute no-brainer. With a nice little stack of comics in hand, it was time to do some Christmas shopping. They have a whole new edition filled with all sorts of great stuff, including a fantastic music section full of vinyl, as well as CDs and even cassette tapes, if you can believe it. But I was here for the gaming section. My family and I are big into board games, and they have a fantastic gaming selection, many of which I really wanted to buy for myself, honestly, for Christmas. They also had a really good D&D section, which both my son and I are very much into. I noticed they had some pretty impressive comic book statues, including this massive Galactus. Wouldn't that be a cool thing to find under the Christmas tree? So with a stack of comic books and a few games in hand, it was time to hit the road and kick off a great family holiday weekend. All right, guys, I got a heck of a deal on some comic books and some Christmas shopping. So let's go back to the house, show you guys everything I got at this great comic sale. So there you go, guys. That was once again That's Entertainment in Worcester, Massachusetts, a massive comic book and collectible store that I love going to because I pretty much collect everything that they carry. And you saw this was Black Friday. They were having a massive sale on everything. Now, they always have a sale going on with their back issue comics. If you get 20 or more, you get 20% off. But this one was unconditional. Didn't matter what you got or how much you got, it was 20% off. And I got some pretty great stuff. Not just comics, I did some Christmas shopping. I got some great D&D stuff for my son and I. I got an expansion to one of my favorite asymmetrical board games, Root. But it was the comics that stole the day. I got a great little stack of comic books, several of which were ones high on my wish list, and I definitely did not break the bank. So before I show them to you, if you like this sort of stuff and you want to support the channel, the best way is to go down, hit that like button, and leave a comment, and make sure you're following me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. So I really want to start with a Spider-Man comic. As you saw in that footage, there was a ton of them there, but I was actually looking for some specific issues, and I found one. It's this, The Amazing Spider-Man number 547 from 2008. But to explain why I wanted this relatively inexpensive back issue, we need to do a quick dive into recent comic book history. So you see at the top here, Brand New Day, that's the name of the storyline, right? Brand new storyline that actually started in the issue before this, which I happen to have right here. I did not get this at That's Entertainment. I already owned it. This is The Amazing Spider-Man number 546. Like I said, the start of the Brand New Day storyline written by Dan Slott. And to explain what goes on in this story, we need to talk about what happened just before it. I think most people know that Civil War was a massive crossover event at Marvel in the 2000s that had huge ramifications on the entire Marvel universe and all their titles. Really affected all the heroes, of course, none more so than Spider-Man. I think a lot of people know that during the course of those events, Spider-Man told the world his secret identity. Yeah, he unmasked himself, said, "I'm Peter Parker, I've been Spider-Man since I was a teenager." This had huge consequences, most of them really bad. And one of the horrible things that happened is Aunt May, his beloved Aunt May, was shot and she was dying. So right after Civil War, we have another storyline called One More Day, where Peter Parker is desperately trying to find a way to save Aunt May, and he goes to everyone in the Marvel Universe. He goes to Reed Richards trying to find a scientific way to save her. He goes to Doctor Strange to find a magical one. Doctor Strange basically says, there's nothing you can do, kid, just be by her side. He even goes to Dr. Octopus, his arch enemy, trying to save Aunt May. None of them can help. Basically resolves to just be there in her final moments. He's kind of given up when someone else approaches him, none other than Mephisto. And Mephisto says, I can save Aunt May, but it's going to cost you. And he gives Peter Parker a Faustian bargain because it's Mephisto. That's what he does. He basically tells Peter he will save Aunt May and undo a lot of the horrible events in recent history at a huge cost. He wants him to give up his marriage to Mary Jane Watson. That's a big one, obviously, right? Especially people who are invested in the Spider-Man character. That is a very important romance. He's married to MJ. Mephisto, because he's cruel and evil, wants him to give up that, something that's incredibly precious to him. And he gives Peter and MJ one day to decide whether to do it or not. And they decide together it's worth saving Aunt May. And so they do. And Mephisto keeps his end of the bargain, not before taunting him a little bit with images of the child that they'll never have. He's a jerk. Basically, he saves Aunt May and undoes a lot of recent things, including his marriage to MJ. They've never been married. Peter's now living with Aunt May again. He's a bachelor. Not only that, the world forgets that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and he even brings back Harry Osborn, who's been long dead, who died in Spectacular Spider-Man 200. He's revealed to be alive. So it undoes a lot of the events of recent comic book history, and the reason why Marvel did this was, well, for financial reasons. They wanted to reboot the Spider-Man titles. You see right here, now on sale 3 times a month. They were pumping these things out. Basically, they wanted Spider-Man to go back to his roots as a bachelor, swinging around the city, fighting villains. And people largely really didn't like it. One, it undermined the whole amazing marriage that he had in relationship with Mary Jane Watson. Of course, also, the whole making a deal with the devil thing, not very Peter Parker-like. Of course, all this would be undone over the subsequent decade or so, but you guys get the idea. It's basically a fresh start, and they start publishing new comic books with this title, Brand New Day, right after One More Day. It makes sense, right? Spider-Man's going up against tons of villains, both classic old ones and brand new ones. And one of them is introduced in this issue right here. This is the first appearance of Mr. Negative. In my opinion, one of the cooler new additions to Spider-Man's Rogue Gallery, one of the best modern villains I think Spider-Man has, and in fact, he's appeared in video games and in cartoons and stuff. A very cool character, and that's actually why I have this book. I like Mr. Negative, and I collect the first appearances of Spider-Man villains. So this is a cool book to pick up, by the way, guys. Hey, if you want a cheap alternative, he had a cameo appearance in 2007's Free Comic Book Day right here. He shows up on like a TV monitor, so if you're looking for a cheaper version, there you go. Otherwise, first appearance of Mr. Negative right here. So, why do I want this issue? Well, that's because Mr. Negative has a whole bunch of cronies, henchmen. He has a gang of guys right here. They're called the Inner Demons. They wear these masks. So, I'm a completionist, guys. I wanted sort of the whole storyline, so I'm chipping away at it. If I have this, I got to get the very next issue. So, first appearance of Mr. Negative's Inner Demons. Now, there's a little bit more going on here. Listen, I don't talk about speculation much on my channel, really at all, but I know some of you like it, and it's worth talking about it. Because a few minutes ago, when I explained the plot of One More Day, where the whole world knows Spider-Man's secret identity, and through magical means, the whole world forgets, if that sounds familiar to you, you're probably thinking of the movie Spider-Man No Way Home, right? Doctor Strange erases the world remembering Peter Parker. That's because they borrowed that plot point from One More Day. So then we have a new storyline, Brand New Day, and that just so happens to be the name of the next Spider-Man movie coming out soon, right? Spider-Man Brand New Day. So a lot of people have thought some of the plot points of this storyline would be in that movie, and it has been rumored that Mr. Negative could be one of the villains in the film, and that seems to be a little bit corroborated, spoiler alert, because someone spotted in a behind-the-scenes photo a logo that looks like an Inner Demon's mask on like a wall or on like a trash can or something like that. So some people speculate if the Inner Demon's in there, you got to have Mr. Negative, right? So there you go. If you're looking for a spec book, you can find it relatively cheap, guys, online. So there you go, guys. First, Mr. Negative. First, Inner Demons. That's why I got it. Sticker price was $3 before the discount. I'll tell you what I paid at the end for everything. But obviously, pretty cheap. Happy to add it to my collection. Hopefully, you guys didn't mind that quick little jaunt down relatively recent Marvel comic book history. So this next comic I wasn't looking for, but it was so cool, I had to pick it up. It's this, Ms. Marvel #1 from 2015. Of course, we're talking about the Kamala Khan Ms. Marvel, and this first issue is the beginning of her own ongoing series, right? She first appeared in the early 2010s in the pages of Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Then she gets her own title in 2014. But that isn't this book. I mean, that one, her first issue, I think most people know it's a cover of her from the nose down. It shows the lightning bolt on her uniform. That's not this. This is a variant, and it's a special one called a Phantom variant. You see there's a little logo there. Basically, there's something called the Phantom Group. It's like 20 publishers that get their own special variant covers, and that's exactly what this is. This is a cover by Saya It came out in 2015, the year after the original first print. But still, guys, for my money, this is a way better cover than that more well-known first issue. I love this art. It's great. I think the character is pretty cool. $5 was the pre-sale price. Happy to pick it up for that. Next up, I'm a big Captain America fan. I have a pretty good Captain America run, and I had to get this because there's a lot of things going for it. Here we go. Captain America #323 from 1986, written by Mark Gruenwald, longtime writer on Captain America. Lots of things going for this. One, Mike Zeck cover. Fantastic. Second, we have one of those 25th anniversary borders. I collect these. And third, we do have a first appearance here. This is the first appearance of the character John Walker as Super Patriot. Now, even if you didn't read Captain America comics in the 80s and 90s, that might ring a bell. John Walker is a character that's now in the MCU. He's a member of the Thunderbolts or the New Avengers, what have you. He's a pretty cool character that started off as Super Patriot and eventually wore the mantle of Captain America when Steve Rogers stepped down. But he dishonored the title and the uniform. Steve Rogers came back, and John Walker became U.S. Agent. And that's kind of how I knew him when I was a kid, as U.S. Agent, sort of a darker, a little more amoral version of Captain America. That's his first appearance right here. And although I have many of his appearances, in those other uniforms when he first becomes U.S. Agent and stuff, I didn't have this issue. Not in the best shape, a little bit of a dust shadow, but at, $9.99 before the sale, I thought it was worth picking up. Pretty cool character and a great, great cover. This book right here, guys, this brings me to my happy place, brings me right down memory lane, and it's a book I always pick up. This is Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends #1 from 1981. Great cover by John Romita Jr. and Al Milgrom. And of course, this was based off of the 80s cartoon Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. It features Spider-Man and his two amazing friends, Iceman, and a new character, Firestar. Yeah, originally they wanted the Human Torch. The idea of you have fire and ice, you have three sort of young, hot-headed Marvel characters, but they couldn't get the license and the rights to Human Torch, so they had to make up a new fire character, Firestar, who, like Iceman, is a mutant. And guys, honestly, this might have been my entry into Marvel Comics as a kid. I remember being really little. I know I'm dating myself here, but I was like 3 and 4 years old, sitting down in front of my TV in Lowell, Massachusetts, watching this cartoon as a kid. And I really credit it with getting me into Marvel Comics. This, along with the Spider-Man live-action TV show, right? I absolutely loved it. And this was years before I collected comic books. Certainly my first introduction to X-Men characters, right? So because of this, because it brings me down memory lane, guys, I love picking up this book. Absolutely. I've come across many copies of this book as cheap as $3, but it can go for a little bit of money. Because I love it so much, I'm going to pick it up at $15. That's what the pre-sale price was. Not in the best shape. There's a little bit of ink up here. But still, guys, Firestar is a pretty cool character. She would move over into Marvel continuity later on in X-Men #193 in 1985. But for now, in non-in-continuity first appearance is totally fine because I loved the cartoon. So let me know if you are a fan of that cartoon, whether you were a kid or an older adult. Let me know, guys. It made a big impact on me. Last, but certainly not least, guys, this comic book is one that's been high on my list, and it was up in the front of the store in the glass case where they keep the nicer books, and there was tons of great books there, but once I saw this one, laser focused, I knew I was going to get it, and it's this. This is Aquaman #35 from 1967. Great Nick Cardy cover. I love Nick Cardy, written by Bob Haney, and this is known as the first appearance of Black Manta, one of Aquaman's greatest nemesis, and personally, my favorite DC supervillain, period. He is my favorite DC supervillain because, one, he looks awesome, and two, he is unrepentantly evil. I mean, guys, he unalived Aquaman's kid. I mean, as a supervillain, you can't really do much worse to the superhero you're fighting than that. He is unbelievably evil, and he's super cool. And because of that, guys, I've been looking for this book for a while. And because I'm a Marvel collector, I don't need a really high-grade copy. I just didn't want to spend a fortune for it. which is why I was happy when I found this. It's not in the best shape. It absolutely needs a clean and a press. I opened it up. The staples look pretty darn good. So it really just needs a clean and a press. But guys, for the price, I couldn't say no. It was priced at $79.99, $80 with a discount. It ends up being $64. Very happy to pay $64 for this awesome Nick Cardy first appearance. A Black Manta to add to my collection. I was ecstatic, guys. So on the whole day, guys, I got all of these comic books for under $90, which I think is a pretty good deal. I got some stuff I was looking for and stuff I wasn't looking for. That's the best part about hunting at a big comic book and collectible store like this with lots of back issues. You never know what you're going to find. I'm pretty happy with everything I came home with. Let me know down in the comments which of my pickups is your favorite and do you think I paid a good price? And that's it. In the meantime, keep hunting for comics in strange and unusual places and not so strange places like massive comic and collectible stores on Black Friday. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.